Wow. In this one exact moment, so many of my worlds are starting to collide. My love of TED, community, sharing ideas, children's books. If I get excited and talk quickly, just holler. My wife and I, when we were starting our family many years ago, were trying to figure out how we would best spend our money, as most young families are going through. We didn't have very much money, extra money to spend. We were trying to figure out which activities we were going to put our money into, whether it was swimming, gym, dance, books, anything. And we decided we would geek out. We did what a lot of people do in the business world, and that is we did a cost-benefit analysis. What we found, actually, when we did our cost-benefit analysis is books were by far the most beneficial use of our money at the time. We did eventually, and we always wanted to get into gymnastics and dance and swimming. But we really wanted to give something to our children and to our family. And that's what I'm going to be talking a little bit about today. We started to invest in the books. We spent obscene amounts of money on books. In fact, one time we went to Denver to visit my sister-in-law, and on the very last day we were there, of a 7-day trip, we found out about an independent bookstore that specialized in kids' books. And before we left that night, we had moved all of our clothes into one bag and used the other bag completely for $500 worth of books that we'd bought. We made our passion for books social. We used to have gatherings in our house, like Tupperware parties of children's books. We'd invite neighborhood parents over. We'd have cheese and wine. Leave your kids at home. Bring your 5 or 10 favorite children's books. And we sat around. We talked about kids' books a lot. What we found, though, when we did that, is that a lot of our books, I mean, we're already aware of this, but you see people's reactions. About 30% of our books in our house were dealing with the cycle of life, which also means death. And you get weird looks when you talk about children's books that have death in them. However, we felt it was important to have that diverse collection of books. And then eventually we took our passion for books online. We have a blog and podcast called Just One More Book. And through that, I've learned from my wife, who is far more passionate about children's books than I am, a love of children's books. And a lot of what I'll be talking about today is stuff that I've learned directly from my wife, and also from conversations with authors, illustrators, literacy experts, and industry insiders. So I'm going to talk about 3 qualities. There's a lot of them, but I've limited myself to 3 qualities that we can develop from children's books. So let's start with context. Context is the way we interpret and interact with our world. When I was a kid growing up, and I wasn't very much into books, and I actually, this is from my original book collection. This is like the only book that I would read when I was 6 years old, Alligator Pie. Does anybody remember Alligator Pie? Dennis Lee? This was my context. I could only see life through the lens of Alligator Pie. And to prove it, I'm going to recite the first paragraph of the poem that I remember from my original reading of this book. I did not have to reread this book. Alligator Pie, Alligator Pie. Do you guys know this one? If I don't get some, I think I'm going to die. Give away the green grass, give away the sky, but don't give away my alligator pie. Fun book. Narrow vision, though, for a child, just be focused on skipping rhymes for their entire life. So it wasn't until I was probably about 30 years old that I really started to develop a love of reading and children's books. Becoming a father helps. So what you really want to do is you want to have a broad context of books. You want to have a full range. You don't want to limit yourself to Alligator Pie, nor do you want to limit yourself to books about the cycle of life. And the children's book industry has matured, and it's an exciting time. There are so many amazing books. I'm going to highlight a few of them in a few minutes. But what I really want to focus in on is one of the amazing things about having a broad context is that you are able to understand the difference between books from the 1950s and the 2000s and appreciate the value from both eras in terms of language and social norms. So this represents part of our collection of books that deal with the cycle of life. These are books that deal with conflict, remembrance, peace, war. Enemy Pie is a great book. It's about friends. Well, they weren't friends first, but with Enemy Pie, they became friends. Variations on a theme. This is another important thing to have. There's lots of fairy tales. There's lots of great books. Here's Three Little Pigs. There are 3 different versions of it. There's the three little wolves and the big bad pig, which is not just the story turned around. It's a story completely turned on its head. It's really funny. And then you have the true story of a wolf, which is the wolf defending the charges against him for what he's done to the pigs. There are, for every fairy tale, by the way, that you know and love, say Cinderella, Snow White, all these different books, there are versions of them from cultures around the world. A lot of them are very similar, and there's some differences in them, and this is a great way to learn the world and experience the world through a variety of different eyes. Personalities in the Human Condition. Did I bring time out? This is one of the books that I really love, and I don't think I brought it with me, is Book of Timeouts. Who cannot relate to a timeout here? Put up your hand. Excellent. Okay. This is a book about famous people who have been on timeout. Babe Ruth for a suspension. Napoleon went to jail. All these different things. Tell me you couldn't have fun appreciating a connection between yourself and famous people around the world who also had timeouts. You don't have to tell me about your timeouts. Science and math and inventions and creative thinkers have never been so exciting. There's books that teach math and science through poems. There's fractions. There's books about Jacques Cousteau, who I knew of, and I used to watch him on television many years ago. I didn't know half the stuff I knew about him until I read a picture book about him. 32 pages, changed my life. Here's another one, One Beetle Too Many, Charles Darwin. And this is an all-important one, because a lot of people like to shelter their children from the facts and the harsh realities of life. There is indeed depression in life. There's cancer. There's abuse. All these things are things that we deal with on a daily basis. And if you don't arm your children from their formative years, then it makes it that much more difficult to deal with in their later years. My wife herself is going through breast cancer. She'll be starting chemo in 2 weeks. And we received as a gift the Lemonade Club by Patricia Polacco. Now, we have already armed our kids a lot, and we'd read other books about cancer. Patricia Polacco's book is excellent. Character. We are who we are, and we are who we will be from the values we learn, and books are a great way to develop values, ideas, and priorities. The thing is, a lot of people, when they talk about reading with their children, think about reading as an activity. They'll sit down, read a bedtime book, and the goal is to read the book. It's not a race. It's not a competition. You're not playing against a computer or anybody else. The real value of reading a book, especially in developing people's character, is in taking the time to read the book and engage, have the experience of the book. Thomas Wartenberg is a professor down in the United States. He's written a book called Big Ideas for Little Kids. It's about teaching philosophy to children through children's books. And let me tell you something, and I challenge you to do this. Reading a book with a child and asking prompting questions that are philosophical in nature will be the most amazing learning experience you will have in your life. And I urge you tonight to go and read a book to a child, yours or somebody else's, turn on an audio recorder, start to ask philosophical questions about the people and the events in the book, and listen. And you will learn more in half an hour from that child than you will in a week about philosophical issues. The other thing that reading and taking the time and having the patience with a child to read the book will teach them how to entertain themselves. It will teach them patience, and it will teach them, building an attention span. In our modern culture, and I know my attention span has gone south since the internet has become more and more popular, taking the time to sit down and read a book and engage over the book is one of the true life experiences. The other thing that we gather from children's books is information. We gather this from all books, of course. Children's books are written so well. They're concise and they're loaded with information. There is, unlike adult books or any other book, no word wasted in a children's book. If you have 32 pages to tell a story, communicate an idea, you want to make sure that every piece of ink that's in that book contributes to that, whether it's the words or the images. And here's another amazing thing. A lot of kids will learn how to read books before they can actually read words. That's because they can look at the pictures. My niece down in the United States, her mom reads to her all the time, and there's a book that she's memorized, and she will flip the pages. She'll read it to herself, read it out loud, flip the pages on cue because she's memorized the words, and the pictures are her cue for that story now. So don't underestimate the power of literacy through pictures. It's a shame they don't put pictures in adult books. What we gather, this information that we gather becomes our cargo. It forms the basis for decision-making, for analytical thinking, which I like to think of things in terms of analytical thinking as opposed to creative. Analytical things, it suggests to me that there's far more opportunities to learn and explore the ideas. Critical seems like you're just going to pick it apart and attack it. Becomes the basis for aggregate knowledge. Helps us become thinkers, leaders, and doers. And prepares us for critical decision making, by the way. However, not every children's book is written well. And not every great children's book is on full display at the bookstore when you go there, or the library. You have to dig. It's hard to find a really good children's book sometimes. Of course, I'll drop my books. When you're looking at a bookshelf like this, right? It means you have to pull out the book and open it up and read the book. Maybe not just a few pages, but read the book. There's a lot of amazing books out there, and you just have to look for the gold. You have to mine for it. When you read a book, sometimes on a given night, you might have to read more words than you're prepared to. And that's okay. Take the time, because it's about relationship building. Coming back to character. Spending the time to read a book to a child, or with an adult, as our friend Sherry Fitch tells us, wouldn't the world be a different place if adults read a picture book to each other each night? You're saying to that person you're spending the time with that they're worth spending time with. And that self-esteem, that self-confidence, that's something you have to build from a young age. You can start late in life. You're already at a deficit, though. And I wrote this down because I was afraid I was going to forget how to say it. And this is the thought that I want to lead you with. I'd originally written it from the negative point of view, but I changed it this morning to the positive point of view because I think this is a critical point, and this is what I'm hoping you'll walk away with. Each time we equip a child or an adult with a children's book experience, not just the book, but the experience itself, we equip the world with a new thinker, leader, or doer, perhaps all. And that can make the future a good place to be. Thank you very much.